Hello, listeners. Welcome to this evening's edition of Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, everybody. Got a lot of early comers today.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. And we broadcast on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation on 101.7 FM, and the radio station is called CIVL, which you can also catch us on the major podcasting platforms, and also on my website. There's all the back episodes at drlesliephillips.com.
We were named the #1 public radio station again in Canada this year.
Oh, really? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And
Wow,
it's true too.
That's great, isn't it?
Yep.
That's good news.
I think so.
Yeah. Good to be going out live on air in a top-rated radio station. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent
Public
news.
radio station.
Yeah. Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality, and we tackle really any subject matter under that general umbrella. We tend to do a lot more about psychic abilities and healing just because that's my specialty, but occasionally we go a bit out there, and we're responding to a request from our listeners to talk about mythical creatures. So that's what the show tonight is about, mythical creatures and
places too.
Pardon?
And places too, like Stonehenge and stuff like that.
Oh, is it? I better add that to my notes then. Mythical places. Oh, okay. That's cool. Well, let's start with the mythical creatures.
Oh boy.
And I have to say, I certainly don't count myself an expert about all of this. Maybe I know about some of it, but so what I thought I'd do is I'd try and just position us with a kind of overview. And then if people have their own personal experiences of mythical creatures and mythical places, I would love you to write about it in the chat so that we can explore your experiences. And I don't mind giving you a psychic perspective, an intuitive perspective on what happened to you. So when I was thinking about mythical creatures, I figured a good way to structure the conversation is, I think that there are 2 or 3 ways of slicing it. One is physical creatures, seemingly physical creatures that people say they've experienced them with their physical eyes and their physical senses. And then the other would be non-physical creatures. And then there's kind of like something in between, which is semi-physical or interdimensional type of being. And so the physical ones, I can't say that I've had much to do with them, but I can talk a little bit about the ones that I have encountered. I was researching it a little bit, and the name that's commonly used is cryptid. Cryptid is animals that cryptozoologists believe may exist somewhere in the wild, but whose existence is disputed by science.
Cryptid, C-R, how do you spell that?
CRYPTID.
Tid.
Cryptid. And in sort of looking at a list of cryptids, it seems like there are maybe 3, possibly 4 kinds of them. And that's, are they in the air, the land, the sea? So it seems like all around the world, different versions of what I come to know as the Loch Ness Monster, because I'm from the UK, but all around the world there are different examples of lake monsters and people having sightings or beliefs about lake monsters. And a lot of them look quite similar when you see the sketches that people have drawn of them. And one theory is that they could be sort of like a leftover from dinosaurs. So they look like plesiosaurs in people's renditions of them. Then the flying creatures, things like, and I've heard people talk about this and I never knew what it was, the Mothman. But also the Jersey Devil. And you might sort of, I suppose you could put the idea of dragons and dragon-like creatures there. So those are the flying ones. And then the sort of forest-dwelling, earth-based fall into 2 categories. One, hominids, like us, like Sasquatch or Yeti, or the Australian name for it is Yowie, I think, the abominable man. Yeah, they've got examples of those all over the world in different cultures. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, like there's quite a few that are like cats, and so on.
A friendly neighborhood Sasquatch.
Yeah, and I would say out of all of those listed, the only one really, well, maybe 2 of them, have I had a personal experience of, and that is a Sasquatch. I've definitely seen a Sasquatch, but I question whether it's physical, or at least whether it's physical complete. I would say it's more interdimensional, not necessarily occupying the same dimension as we are, but sometimes able to bleed through into our dimension. And what people have said about them is that they are one of the original hominids of the planet that evolved to be in a different phase or dimension. So we're kind of hybrids, genetically engineered hybrids, the theory goes, and they are more like the purebred earth creatures. So I've seen one of them with my clairvoyant sight, and so I would, I can validate that one from my own experience. But I'd like to know if anyone listening has experienced any encounters with cryptid-like creatures, or seen any lake monsters or anything like that. And if you have, then I'd be happy to look at that experience for you and see what comes up around it.
We have one here in BC too, Ogopogo.
Ogopogo, yes. That's right, the Loch Ness Monster, Ogopogo. Let's see, what are some of the other ones? I wrote them down. So Selma, which is what they call it in Norway, or they call them in Norway. Ogopogo in Canada. Mokele Membe in the Congo, and Manipogo in Manitoba, Mamlambo in South Africa, And, you know, there's more of them. So there's stories of them all around the world. Never seen one myself. Never looked at the idea of it. But if somebody wants me to, I'm willing to go into trance and take a look and see what information we
Well,
can
they
get.
say that they found things like footprints and scat, you know, like feces and things like that, that they attribute to the here in Canada, to the Sasquatch, and to them around the world. So, but
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, although I know some people who are really into it. I should
yeah,
probably,
we know some people that are into it. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that's the ones that are supposed to be on a physical level. And then my realm, more like the non-physical level, I would say the angelic kingdom, the Devic realm, and maybe even what we might call the demonic. So these are more non-physical beings, right? And if we talk about the angelic and Devic realms, then the way I see the angelic realm is that these are really forces of nature, great beings that tend to, they're non-physical, but they tend to, they're in service to the physical. So it's a separate evolutionary pathway than the physical realm. And so you have everything from the like great archangels who are relating to more like the forces of nature. You can have an angel that looks after, I don't know, the magnetics of planets or the element of fire throughout the cosmos, all the way down to a little tiny Devic creature who tends to a flower or a particular type of a plant. So in some ways, we think about angels as separate than things like, we call them, there's so many names for the Devic realm: fairies, elves, brownies, gnomes, you name it. But one thing that they all have in common is they're non-physical beings, and they relate to nature and the forces of nature. And they tend to be guardians of different aspects of nature, whether it's a single plant or a tree or an entire location, like a volcano or a waterfall or an entire planet or even an entire solar system. So yeah, if anybody wants us to talk later in the show about more around that, then let me know in the chat. I didn't know that we were covering places, mystical places, but apparently
Well,
we are.
well,
So
Brian's really intense on finding out about the Bermuda Triangle.
the
So
Bermuda Triangle, yeah, okay. So,
we have a couple of comments, by the way.
oh, that's good, 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 good. So the Bermuda Triangle, I believe, is relating to some advanced technology from pre-Diluvian times that ended up under the ocean, but is still active. So, for example, we have all of this mythology, don't we, about Atlantis going under the water and how there may have been an advanced society on Earth that pre-existed our written history. And so the explanations that I've heard that to explain the Bermuda Triangle is that it's related to that, and that there is some kind of technology that they had that is continues to function and create distortions in I don't know whether you'd call them dimensionality distortions or time-space reality distortions, but that is what is happening in that area. I don't know if that's correct, but that's the theory that I've heard about it. And again, in the second half of the show and the rest of the show, we can spend just looking at these things psychically rather than intellectually. But I just wanted to lay out a framework for what we were going to cover tonight. And so I think that would be a really great thing to do. Hand it over to the audience and say, well, what experiences have you had of strange cryptid creatures or strange places and locations? Have you been to a crop circle? Did you go inside a crop circle? If you did, what happened? Have you been to Stonehenge? What was that like? Have you had experiences of angelic creatures or the opposite? So I did look up that there are creatures called, there's all around the world, there's these creatures who are supposed to come when you're asleep and be the stuff of nightmares. So in different cultures, they're called different names. And one of them in the Nordic countries, it's called mare, and it sits on your chest while you're asleep. And I lived in Denmark for a year, and I had the experience of that happening to me, oddly enough. And it reminds me or makes me think a little bit of what they call succubuses and incubuses, which is this medieval creature where they try and have sex with you while you're asleep at night. And one of them's the male version and one of them's the female. I think the incubus is the female and the succubus is the male. Anyway, I
thought those were called husbands.
We have to go to a break, but I just throw all of that out. Yeah, it's a different kind of show tonight. I know a lot of you are interested in this stuff, so tell me your experiences, tell me your questions, and the rest of the show we will just delve into it. Welcome back, listeners. Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. A little bit outside of my comfort zone, but topic that's been requested on mythical creatures and what did we call it? Not mythical places and mythical creatures.
Oh yeah, and mythical places, mythical creatures.
Yeah, because I wouldn't say I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm more of an intuitive, and I like to teach people to develop their intuition. But tonight's show, this one time only,
Denise mentions also that portals, and I think portals can fall into that.
Yeah, that's
overall category.
That's a cool one. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, Denise, because in my clientele recently, I'd say there's been an uptick of people who are experiencing portals, who are experiencing portals in different places, different cities, with spirits transitioning in or out of those portals. I suppose we could also include the idea of you know, the energy hotspots, vortices. Maybe they're a bit different, like the vortices on planet Earth are more like places where there's energy incoming or outgoing, where you can upload and download information or have experience energy shifts by being in those places. So, next person, what else are they interested in?
Okay, let's go over some of these comments that we have. Brian says there's a creature, some sort of dog man, referred to the creature of the land between the lakes in, I guess, Kentucky, a cryptid like Bigfoot. One story is for a witness who watched it disappear, perhaps like you mentioned, shifting between dimensions, would certainly explain why no one known has captured a Sasquatch.
Yes. I've never heard of Dogman. But yeah, on Wikipedia, they've got like a whole bunch of different cryptids that they list. Quite a few cat ones. And they've got an anteater man.
An anteater man.
Yeah, a humanoid anteater monster called a capolobo in Brazil.
Never heard that one.
No.
Huh. You never know what you find out there. And we thought we had problems with coyotes. Okay. Denise says, I have a theory. I've heard stories of encounters from my elders. I think today, because of the electrification and moving further away from the natural world, these encounters are rare.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, Denise, that our lives are so busy, our minds are so busy. We very rarely just are in the stillness, you know, where we're just sitting with nature or in nature with our minds empty, so that we can just drop in and experience all of the senses and sounds of nature's around us. Instead, we are inundated with all of the distractions of the modern world. So I think that's true, that I'm sure that if you wanted to have more of these experiences, then one of the ways of going about it would be to cut yourself off a little bit from go in the woods for a week where there's no electricity, and don't take your cell phone.
I'm having problems keeping up with all the comments.
Oh, this is a popular topic, isn't this?
It looks that way.
Interesting.
It looks that way. Where did I leave you off here? Leah. Hello, Leah. And Leah says there's a Cressy.
Here on Zoom, she could tell us all about it.
Yeah. There's a Cressy of Crescent Lake in Roberts Arm, Newfoundland.
A Cressy at Crescent Lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
so
the
that's
name
like
of
an
it.
Ogopogo. That's
Yeah,
like a lot.
Denise says, I read that there is an Alaskan triangle.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that. Tell us more what you've heard, Denise.
And man, I'm having problems keeping up with it. I'll get to them all. I promise. Kirsty says, what about all the rich-like gates? Ectopic. Why are they all building elaborate tunnels underground?
Say that again. The rich.
What about all the rich-like gates? Ectopic. Why are they building elaborate tunnels underground?
Gates ectopic. I don't know.
Not sure. Ectopic is occurring in an abnormal position or in an unusual manner or form.
Yeah, I've heard of an ectopic pregnancy, but
Yeah.
well, so okay. I mean, I've heard that wealth, I think she's talking about wealthy individuals who are making sure that if things go
Oh,
wrong,
Bill Gates.
oh, Gates,
Bill Gates.
okay. The rich like Bill Gates. Yeah, creating underground bunkers where they can survive if things go down on the planet. Well, I believe that's correct that they are doing that. But is there a question around it or just a sharing? I
No, I
believe
think that was just a sharing. Really having problems keeping up. Okay. And Kirsty says she lives on a famous buffalo kill site.
So is there energy left over from what's happened there? So, I mean, that's an interesting comment because I think that, you know, the earth herself has her own energy and her own energy grid. And so do the animals and the humans. And so where there are areas where there's been intense activity, like a war, or perhaps like buffalo killing grounds that were there for thousands of years, that it leaves an echo or an energy deposit in that area of the planet. So, for example, if you walk into a field where there's been a battle, then you can feel the energy of the suffering that's happened there. Or perhaps if you walk into a field which is the buffalo killing area, that you would have a ability to tune into that energy. So yeah, and sometimes that can be what's happening with some of these experiences, is that people are tuning into an echo. So if we take the things like the lake monsters, could there be some kind of plesiosaur left over from millions of years ago? I guess it's possible. Or could there be some kind of echo or leakage in between the dimensions that allows somebody to temporarily witness one of these things? Who knows?
Okay. Hang on 1 second. I just want to put together this string from Denise. Okay, I'm sorry for the dead air, Dr. Leslie. Okay, Zachary says, in the Bermuda Triangle, I've heard a very large crystal, and they used weather manipulation tech. Do you see large crystal?
Okay, let's have a look. Well, I've definitely seen, when I've been looking at Atlantean technology in other contexts, I've definitely seen crystal technology. I'm just gonna get the location up on my computer so that I can just look exactly where I'm scanning. We're gonna have to cut out lots of dead air bits, but okay, so Bermuda Triangle. Huh. It's not even got a triangle picture, it's just got like here, and it's in the middle of the ocean. Maybe if I reduce that's not a very good map. Bermuda Triangle. Okay, I see where it is. It's sort of above the Caribbean islands. And they've found other things there, haven't they? They're like the Bimini Road, and which underwater
road,
monoliths, causeways and such. Well, I do see something, and it's interesting because whatever it is, it feels like it's on its side, so it's pointing in one direction. So I almost see the like an energy beam, but it's not pointing towards the land. It feels like it's pointing away from the land. So if it was at the bottom of the ocean, it's coming out like this. Again, a bit like a triangle that way too. Yeah, it just feels like it is. So yeah, a crystal technology left at the bottom of the ocean that's still operating, and it's probably not operating in the same capacity as it was, but there's something going on.
Yeah, quite. Denise talks about one of the places we have here in BC is the Riverview Hospital. Said there's a very Riverview Hospital where the mentally challenged people were, the government had them quarantined and things like that, and then they let them all out. And she says that's why they like to film there. And I've actually filmed there, been in 4 or 5 films there as an extra. And you're absolutely right. The energy in that place, in certain areas of that place, are incredibly strong. They're you can feel the, you don't see them, and some people have had experiences. I didn't have any of those, but I could feel the spirits there. That there's just, it's just like, it's almost like a sci-fi movie where, somebody goes in and there's all kinds of ghosts and things that are attacking them. It's the same thing. They don't attack, but you can feel the energy there. It's almost malleable. You can almost feel it. You can almost feel the energy. It's so thick. And in one area, it's in the, I think it's the east side of the building, or the far end of the building, where there's a communal area, and in there it's huge. It's huge. So yeah, interesting. Okay, let's go to another one. I've got 4 pages of notes.
Really? Is that on YouTube? What about in Facebook?
Both. This is going back and forth. Brian says, I had an experience when I was younger, but don't know what it was. It looked like a large snake coiled up rather peacefully in a fenced area by our garage. It seemed dreamlike. I know I ran back and told my parents, and they immediately searched the area but found nothing. And there was nowhere for a snake or an animal to go due to the area it was in and the time. It seemed dreamlike. I'd love for you to look at that. I've always wondered what about that experience. I still remember it so clearly.
Okay. Well, I feel like the main thing that I'm being shown about this is you and your psychic abilities. So it's like your sixth and seventh chakra are sort of lit up really, really bright. And I don't think it was a physical thing. I think that it was something that you were seeing with your spiritual sight. And I don't know that there's any meaning for you other than to have the experience of seeing something with your physical sight, because within yourself, it's like, yeah, that happened. It was so real to me. So I'm not getting any information about the being. I'm just being shown more about you, and it as a story or a mechanism to help you validate your own intuition. I had an experience once, which not exactly like that, but there was like a red cloud in my apartment. I was living in an apartment, and it was just hanging there. And I could walk up to it and put my hand inside it, and the temperature inside it was different. I could like viscerally feel the difference between the air when my hand was inside it and when my hand was outside it. And it was just red. It was like a red fog, but like a shape that was just there hanging in the air. Very strange. Oh, looks like we have to go to another break. Maybe we'll take a slightly longer break to give Corey a chance to
That's okay.
read any questions.
I won't get through all of them.
We'll be back.
Sorry, folks, we're not going to be able to get through everything.
But what we're on the break now, so you can cut this bit out. But what we will do is we'll read them all afterwards and see if we might put them together into another show, depending on what they are. Seeing as it's so popular. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning into Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. And tonight we're talking about strange creatures and strange places. Mysteries and mystical creatures. And there's lots of questions from our live audience.
Oh, yeah.
Get to it.
Brian just makes a note. He says, I experienced the portal you looked into for me on a show a while back. It was a really cool experience, definitely high vibration. And Omida, she says, can you speak on centaurs and petrocentaurs, which is like a centaur but with wings? I have a spirit guide that has shown up and has been in the form of a petrocentaur, and I was curious about why they showed up in this form also, although in general, I'm curious about these.
Yeah, I have another student who has a Pegasus as a spirit guide. So that's two of you now with those. Well, I will look at this specifically for you. Some of this stuff is almost like a racial memory, or back to Atlantean times when they were doing genetic experimentation and messing around with combining animal forms with human forms. So some of it just exists within our species mythos. But let's, for example, centaurs is an example of that. But let's take a look at your question around your winged creature that's your spirit guide. Well, one of the things that the wings symbolize is spirit. And so why did it show up in that form? It is representing the combination of the physical realm and the spiritual realm coming together in one form, and is relating to teaching you about about that within yourself. You are spirit, you have a body, that the purpose of life in our world is to bring the light of spirit into the physical system, to become fully embodied, to be enlightened. And so it's showing me the idea, that's the idea of spirit and body coming together. And also the idea of being able to fly, meaning being able to elevate our consciousness to higher realms of consciousness, being able to be more expansive in our own experience of reality. So opening up to the multidimensionality. So that's the information I'm being given about that particular guide, helping you to evolve and helping you bring spirit and body together.
Big one back. Thank you, Dr. Leslie.
You're welcome.
Oh, this is from Denise. Again, Denise says, I had an experience right here in Maple Ridge many years ago with my sister. We were driving down Dudney and turned off the road and ended up in this deserted area, almost like an abandoned factory. Felt like a strange place. We turned around to get out of there and encountered an old woman dressed in black. She extended her hand and reached out to the car. My sister drove away quickly. I turned around as I was concerned for the lady and she was gone. A black cat was in her spot. We never saw that place again. Strange experience. Felt like a strange place. We turned around to get out of there and encountered. Oh, this is okay.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, okay. I presume Chris is talking about a portal here. Says I have one of them on my property, and I'd like to know how the heck to close it, but I've been told it's evil and cursed.
Mm. Oh gosh, okay.
Okay, as in you're gonna look at
Okay,
it.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it. Okay. Where does I'd be nice to know the location approximately, but and this is a person called Chris.
Chrissy Davis, yeah.
Chrissy Davis. Chrissy, where do you live? Do you live in Canada or do you live in the United States? I'd be interested to know.
Sounds like she's in the U.S.
It does look like a kind of interdimensional portal. And the reason I said, do you live in Canada? But I guess the US has its own version, is I feel like I was seeing like a Sasquatch type creature relating to it. I don't know that it looks particularly evil to me, but I think it looks more like humans keep your distance. It more like a territorial thing, or so that's really what I'm seeing about it. It looks like a sort of interdimensional portal. I'm not sure that you need to be worried about it. I'd just be respectful of it. Let's say it that way.
Okay. Next. Denise says many planes and people missing over the years just disappeared, never to be heard of again. Yes. One story of a marathon runner that was at the end of the race and was marked off before reaching the finish line 200 feet away. He turned around a bend and never reached the finish line. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting one.
And Omeda says, I also once had a man who I was talking to in London disappear in front of me. I thought he was real until he vanished before my eyes. It was surreal. I was in my early 20s at the time. I assumed he was some kind of highly evolved being taking form.
Also very interesting, sort of, yeah.
Taking form to talk to me for some reason, but I'm not sure what it was.
And your assumption looks correct. Yeah, maybe saying hello. And again, it's a bit like Brian's one. It's one of those things you never forget. And it opens you up because you say there's more than meets the eye. You know, it's not just all physical stuff. So I think that perhaps it was relating to saying hello and helping you, sort of giving you a nudge, helping you initiate your awakening journey, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Brian says, I believe the Navajo Indians have skinwalkers, shapeshifters, and in the Philippines, a creature called an answang, I believe. These supposedly shapeshifting humans of some sort of blend.
Yeah, this is all the stuff of Coast to Coast with George Norrie, isn't it? Skinwalkers and Skinwalker Ranch, and I don't know anything about it, but I've just heard those things said. Yeah, so yeah, don't know what that are. It doesn't sound like it's a question though, just a sharing.
And May says, and I think you've touched on this already, but I wonder if any of these creatures are the result of a timeline cross, as in the legend of King Arthur.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, it could be one thing.
Yeah,
I mean, and there must be all kinds of explanations for some of these things.
Yeah, the legend of King Arthur and the Round Table. So it sounds, May, like you have an idea of what that, you have a belief around what that is, which from the way that you wrote your question.
Mm-hmm. Here's my favorite. So Amina says, is the North Pole and Santa Claus real? In my heart of hearts, I truly feel that Santa Claus style North Pole actually exists in another dimension. Thoughts, please.
I'm sure all potentials, isn't there? But here's something that I found really, really interesting recently about the origins of Santa Claus. And in a pre-Christian pagan deity from a very, very, very long time ago. And the name of it was Kernanos. And that deity was actually kind of a teaching about the law of attraction. What you put out is what you get back. Everything in reality is a reflection of who you are. And that got turned into, have you been naughty or nice? Because if you've been nice, that gets reflected back at you with a present. But if you've been naughty, that gets reflected back at you with a lump of coal. So I found that absolutely fascinating, that that's the sort of ancient pagan origins of Santa Claus. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess anything that you can think of can exist in another dimension, and probably does. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, it's I guess if we were talking about these things, I guess Santa had to come up, eh? I love it. Santa Claus explained on Dr. Leslie's radio show.
In fact, I loved that story of Cernunnos so much. I saw in the store something that reminded me of it, and I bought it. And then I since found out that they dug up a kind of cauldron from the ancient Celtic with a picture of this Cernunnos on it, and it's like an antlered man. And I picked up a bowl at Christmas. It's like this gold bowl, and it's got a deer on either side, but they're looking at each other. So it's sort of like they're reflections of one another. And I feel like this bowl contains the story of all reality within it. But maybe that's for another show. It's like a symbol that I can really use as a teaching prop anyway.
Yeah, Mason, I would think that if everything is happening now, there could be bleed throughs from
Totally.
different realities. Okay, she says, in one of my classes, there's talk of an Atlantean crystal that is leaching info into from Atlantis in the form of fumes.
Also interesting.
Let's talk about Atlantis for a second, Dr. Leslie.
Okay. What would you like to know about
Well,
it?
you tell me what we should know.
I don't know what you should know. Everyone's on their own journey, and so explore what's of interest. I mean, so the idea is that Atlantis is an ancient civilization that went through actually that existed for thousands of years, probably about 35,000 years, and so got to be quite technologically advanced, but in that time scale of 35,000 years went through multiple catastrophic events, with the final one being ultimately destructive of the civilization. And so and the idea is that they developed many things, the ability to fly, transportation. They had crystal technology. They had genetic engineering. They had, many highly evolved things, but they also had a very polarized society. And so Edgar Cayce refers to it as children of the law of one and the sons of Belial. And it's sort of more like the spiritual camp, the law of one group, and the materialistic, greedy group, the sons of Belial. And so they developed their technology before, in a way, they were capable of using it in a responsible fashion. And so some of the things that happened were a result of their misuse of the technology they developed. And many of the people alive today have previous lives in that Atlantean period. And so we are a mirror in many ways of that Atlantean period. And you could take the idea of the the AI technology that we have now. There's a couple of different directions that could go in, and it all depends on our consciousness and how balanced we are within our own consciousness versus how polarized we are. So and there's different people where you can source information about Atlantis. Edgar Cayce wrote a lot about it, and also in some of Dolores Cannon's work, there are references to Atlantic, but you can imagine a stretch of time that's 35,000 years. And you can't really talk about it in a sentence, can you? I mean, I remember that they, in some of the stuff I remember reading, that Dolores Cannon had channeled from her clients, that was that they well, they had ever burning lights. They had some kind of special coating on their buildings that was like a crystalline coating that would I don't know, light up and things like that. That they were adept at certain, I guess you might call it mind control, where that they could make people do things. They had a subgroup of people who were their slaves, who they so yeah, there's a lot to say about Atlantis, really. And apparently I've run out of time on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great, Dr. Leslie. Folks, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a like and a follow. Well, everybody here should have already followed, since you have to join up to get onto the show. And Brian says thank you for covering the topic.
Yes, and I saw that you had a comment that if enough people believe in something, it can manifest. And absolutely, that a lot of this stuff is a coalescence of people's belief as a thought form, and that thought form takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, definitely.
So absolutely.
And folks, thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everybody. Not sure what it'll be next week, but maybe back to my comfort zone.
Bye-bye now.